What if the foundations of our modern world, our cities, our technology, our entire global system were built upon a secret pact made by the world's first murderer? For over 2,000 years, the Church has told you a simple story. Cain, the killer, was cursed to be a wanderer. His brother Seth's lineage was the line of the righteous. But this is a dangerous oversimplification, a lie of omission. Did you ever stop to ask yourself a simple question? How could a man cursed to be a fugitive and a wanderer go on to build the very first city mentioned in the Bible? Do you see the contradiction? It's hidden in Genesis chapter 4, and it changes everything. This isn't just an ancient story. This is the blueprint for the world you live in right now. The truth is, Cain's lineage was not a failed branch of humanity. They were the architects of a new world order, a civilization built on forbidden knowledge and in direct opposition to God. When you discover what they really built, you will never look at our society the same way again. So you see the paradox, don't you? In Genesis chapter 4, verse 12, God curses Cain. A fugitive and a wanderer you shall be on the earth. Yet only 5 verses later, the Bible says Cain built a city. A city! Pause the video now and think with me. How does a cursed wanderer, a man with no place to call home, suddenly become the world's first architect of civilization? This is the contradiction they never explain in Sunday school. They give you a simple narrative of good versus evil. Seth's line, the godly; Cain's line, the wicked. But the biblical text itself paints a far more complex and, frankly, a more disturbing picture. Why does this ancient detail matter to you right now? Because this isn't just history. This is the blueprint for the system you live in today. The very idea of a city, a fortress of human power, commerce, and technology, did not spring from the righteous line of Seth. It was conceived by the mind of the first murderer. Do you realize what this means? It suggests the very foundation of our modern world is rooted in an ancient rebellion. So we are left with a critical question. How did Cain's descendants become the masters of metalworking, the inventors of complex music, the builders of society, all while supposedly living under a divine curse? There are only 3 real theories to explain this. The first is the accepted Orthodox theory. This view claims Cain's lineage was simply arrogant. Their cities and their technology were nothing more than monuments to their own pride, a defiant gesture against God that accelerated humanity's corruption and led directly to the judgment of the flood. It's a clean explanation, but it leaves a gaping hole. Where did their advanced knowledge come from? The second theory is more modern. It suggests Cain's line represents the birth of secular humanism. Their goal wasn't pure evil, but to create a world that didn't need God, a world of human achievement, human security, and human glory. A compelling thought, but it seems to downplay the extreme violence and darkness the Bible attributes to them. And that leads us to the third theory, the one hinted at in texts that were nearly erased from history. And what if I told you that Cain's descendants didn't discover this knowledge? What if it was given to them? A forbidden gift from a fallen power, intended to build a rival kingdom on earth. To uncover the truth, we must follow this bloodline, because what they built in the past reveals everything about the world being built around us today. Open your Bible with me to Genesis chapter 4. We are going to read the verses they always rush past. Look at verse 16. So Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. So far, so good. The cursed man is cast out. But now look at the very next verse, verse 17.
And what if I told you these are some of the most misunderstood words in the entire Bible? It says, "And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch." Pause the video now and think with me. Did you catch that? He built a city. A man cursed to be a wanderer, a fugitive with no rest, becomes the world's first urban planner. How is this possible? This isn't just a minor detail. This is a glaring contradiction that hides a terrifying truth. Let's look closer. The word used here for city in the original Hebrew is Ir. This doesn't just mean a village or a few tents. An Ir was a fortified, walled settlement. It implies defense, organization, commerce, and law. It is a declaration of human power, a statement that says we don't need God's protection. We will build our own. Do you realize what this means? The very first system designed to replace dependence on God was founded by the first man to murder his own brother. And here is the detail that almost nobody notices. Let's look at Cain's name itself. In Hebrew, it's CAIN. While its exact origin is debated, many scholars link it to a root word meaning to acquire, or even smith or spear. Think about that. His very name hints at creation, forging, and power. This wasn't a man defined by wandering, but by building, by making, by taking control. Now follow the bloodline. It gets even more specific. A few verses down in Genesis 4, verses 20 to 22, we see his descendants. They aren't simple nomads.
One descendant, Jubal, is the father of all who play the harp and flute. He invents organized music, the very soul of culture. Another, Tubal-Cain, is an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. He masters metallurgy. He creates technology from the earth. Do you see the pattern? A city for protection, music for culture, metal for tools and weapons. Within just a few generations, Cain's lineage has built the three pillars of all worldly empires. This changes everything you were taught about the pre-flood world. It wasn't just a chaotic mess. It was a highly advanced, organized civilization, a rival kingdom. It's no coincidence that this is the lineage that perfects violence. Lamech, Cain's descendant, brags about killing a man and declares himself more vengeful than God. The technology they created wasn't for peace, it was for power. So the question becomes unavoidable. Where did this sudden, explosive leap in knowledge come from? How did a cursed bloodline suddenly master the arts of civilization that would define humanity for the next 6,000 years? The Orthodox theory says it was just human pride. But that answer feels too simple, doesn't it? It doesn't explain the source of the knowledge. And here is the problem that nobody mentions. If it was just human ingenuity, why did it lead so directly to a judgment that wiped out the entire world? So, how does the official narrative explain this massive contradiction? How do they reconcile Cain the cursed wanderer with Cain the master builder? This brings us to the first theory, the one you were likely taught in Sunday school. It's the Orthodox accepted view. Most theologians, from ancient church fathers like Augustine of Hippo all the way to modern pastors, will tell you a simple story. Cain's lineage was driven by pure, unadulterated pride. Their city, their technology, their culture, it was all a defiant fist shaken in the face of God. In his monumental work, The City of God, Augustine explains that humanity is divided. There is the heavenly city, which lives by faith, and then there is the earthly city, which glories in itself. And who was the founder of that earthly city? Cain. His city wasn't just a place to live, it was a fortress of self-reliance.
The music his descendants created wasn't for worship, it was for human glory. The metallurgy they perfected wasn't just for tools, it was for power and control. Do you see the logic? It's a powerful moral lesson. According to this view, the incredible inventions of Tubal-Cain and Jubal weren't blessings, they were accelerants for sin. They were the very tools that Genesis 6 says filled the earth with violence. This godless, technologically advanced civilization became so corrupt that it had to be completely wiped out by the flood. It's a neat, tidy explanation. It makes sense on the surface. But it leaves a gaping hole in the story. A question so obvious you have to wonder why it's so rarely asked. Pause the video now and think with me. The theory explains the motivation, pride, but it completely fails to explain the source. Where did this sudden explosive leap in knowledge come from? We are talking about mastering metallurgy and complex musical theory within just a few generations of leaving Eden. Does that sound like a normal human progression to you? It feels less like an invention and more like an instruction. This is the detail that almost nobody notices. The orthodox theory explains the rotten fruit, but it never asks what poisoned the tree itself. It tells you Cain's lineage was evil, but it doesn't explain how they became so brilliant so quickly. But here is the problem that nobody mentions. What if Cain's descendants didn't invent this knowledge at all? What if their goal wasn't just pride, but to build a world that could function entirely without God, using a blueprint they were given? A system of humanism so perfect it could make God irrelevant. This brings us to the second theory, the one that modern thinkers find so appealing. It suggests Cain's lineage wasn't driven by pure evil, but by a radical new idea, humanism. What if their goal wasn't to defy God, but simply to make him irrelevant? Think about it. In this view, the city Cain built wasn't a fortress of pride, but a fortress against chaos. It was the first great human project to create security in a fallen world. The metallurgy of Tubal-Cain wasn't just for making weapons, it was for mastering nature, for building, for progress. The music of Jubal wasn't for pagan rituals, but for creating culture, for giving humanity a soul outside of divine worship. Do you see the logic? It's a powerful narrative. It's the story of humanity pulling itself up by its own bootstraps. This theory claims the line of Cain represents the birth of a world where man is the measure of all things. A world of human achievement, human security, and human glory. The goal isn't to fight God, it's to build a system so perfect, so self-sufficient, that you no longer need to think about him at all. This changes everything you were taught about good and evil. It reframes Cain's descendants not as villains, but as the ambitious, tragic architects of the modern world. Their system isn't inherently evil, it's just godless. And isn't that the very definition of the secular world you live in today? It's a clean, intelligent theory. It explains so much about our own society. But it has one fatal flaw. It ignores the blood.
Open your Bible again to Genesis chapter 4, verse 23. Listen to the words of Lamech, Cain's descendant. He isn't giving a philosophical speech about human progress. He is boasting to his wives. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. Pause and let that sink in. Does this sound like a secular humanist building a better world? Or does it sound like a monster reveling in unchecked violence? The Bible is clear. This lineage didn't just create technology, it perfected murder. It birthed a culture of death so absolute that Genesis 6 says the earth was filled with violence, and that the thoughts of man's heart were only evil continually. The humanist theory is too clean. It's too sterile. It doesn't account for the sheer, explosive darkness that erupted from this bloodline. It explains their ambition, but it fails to explain the source of their brilliance or the depths of their depravity. And here is where everything becomes terrifying. What if the two are connected? What if the brilliant knowledge they received came from a source that was itself the very definition of that darkness? A source that wasn't human at all. So you are left standing at a crossroads. The first theory explains the evil, but not the genius. The second theory explains the genius, but sanitizes the evil. Both explanations feel hollow, incomplete. They fail to answer the one question that matters. Where did the knowledge come from? And here is where we must step outside the approved narrative. We must look at the texts that were hidden, the books that were suppressed. Because there is a third theory, a theory so disturbing that for 2 millennia the establishment has tried to bury it. And what if I told you the answer has been waiting in a book that Jesus' own apostles quoted? The Book of Enoch. This ancient text, which almost made it into the Bible, tells a story that Genesis only hints at. It describes a rebellion in the heavens, a group of angelic beings, 200 of them, who made a forbidden pact. They descended to earth and began to teach humanity secrets they were never meant to possess. Forbidden knowledge. Breathe deeply, because what comes now connects everything. What kind of knowledge did they teach? The Book of Enoch, chapter 8, is explicit. It says they taught humanity the art of making swords, knives, and breastplates. They taught them metallurgy, the secrets of the earth. They taught them the creation of instruments and the arts of seduction. Do you realize what this means? Pause the video now and think with me. The very skills that suddenly explode into existence in the lineage of CAIN, metallurgy from Tubal-Cain, complex music from Jubal, are listed point by point as the forbidden curriculum of fallen angels. This is no coincidence. It's a direct connection. This changes everything you were taught about the pre-flood world. Cain's descendants were not just clever. They weren't just proud. They were students. They were the chosen agents for a celestial technology transfer. A dark gift from a fallen power with a specific and terrifying purpose. Do you see the picture forming? This wasn't about human progress. This was about building a weapon. The city was the fortress. The music was the incantation, and the metallurgy was for forging the instruments of war and rebellion. The goal was to build a rival kingdom on earth, a civilization so powerful, so technologically advanced, so culturally seductive that it could make God irrelevant and wage war against heaven itself. The evidence for this is hidden in plain sight, encoded in the name of one of Cain's most famous descendants, a name that reveals the true, horrifying purpose of their entire system, a name that, once you understand it, provides the key to unlocking the blueprint for the final kingdom of man, the very system being built all around you today. You have waded through this entire investigation. Now I am going to reveal the name that unlocks the entire system. The name that proves Cain's lineage was not inventing, but receiving. The name that serves as the signature of the fallen kingdom. Breathe deeply, because what comes now is the key. Open your Bible one last time to Genesis chapter 4, verse 22. It speaks of the final master craftsman in Cain's line.
His name is Tubal-Cain. The verse says he was an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. For centuries, they have told you this means he was the father of industry, the inventor of tools, a pioneer of progress. That is a lie. And here is the detail that almost nobody notices. His name is not one name, it is two. Tubal and Cain. Why would he carry the name of his cursed ancestor, the first murderer? It wasn't a name of shame. It was a title, a declaration of purpose. He was the perfection, the culmination of Cain's original rebellion. Now, let's break down the name itself. In Hebrew, the name Tubal or Tubal is linked to the concept of to be brought or to produce. It can also be connected to the word tevel, which means confusion, the very root of the word Babylon. So you have confusion and production. But what was he producing? Look at the second part of his name, Cain, Cain. As we already discussed, this name is linked to the idea of a smith, a forger, a spear. Put it all together. Tubal-Cain.
It doesn't just mean producer smith. It means the one who produces the things of Cain, the one who perfects the craft of the spear. Do you realize what this means? Tubal-Cain was not the father of industry. He was the father of the arms industry. He was not forging plowshares and cooking pots. He was forging swords, shields, and spearheads. He was the world's first weapons manufacturer. The technology he was given by those fallen entities wasn't for the betterment of mankind. It was for the domination of mankind. Pause the video now and think with me. The very first mention of advanced metallurgy in the Bible is in the context of a lineage that perfected murder. It's no coincidence that his half-brother Jubal was creating music, not for worship, but for culture, for marching, for rituals. It's no coincidence their ancestor built a fortified city, not for community, but for defense and control. This changes everything you were taught about the pre-flood world. It was a military-industrial complex, a civilization built on 3 pillars, a fortified state, a culture of propaganda, and the technology of warfare. This is the blueprint. This is the seed of Babylon, of Egypt, of Rome, and of every empire that has ever risen to defy God. The system of Cain was never about human pride alone. It was a joint venture, a partnership between a rebellious bloodline on earth and fallen powers in the heavens. Their goal was to build a kingdom of man so powerful, so technologically armed, so culturally seductive, that it could offer humanity a salvation without God. A security built on walls and weapons, not on faith. And when you understand this, you will never look at our own world the same way again, because this exact system is being rebuilt right now, on a global scale. Do you realize what this means? The technology of Cain's line was never about progress. It was about power. It established the unholy trinity that has defined every godless empire in history. The fortified state for control, the seductive culture for distraction, and the advanced military for domination. This is the blueprint, the operating system of rebellion. And here is the detail that almost nobody notices. The New Testament writers understood this perfectly. They saw Cain not as a historical figure, but as a spiritual principle, an eternal path of rebellion. The Apostle John in 1 John chapter 3 verse 12 tells you plainly that Cain was of the wicked one and murdered his brother. He wasn't just a man who made a mistake. He was an agent. He belonged to another kingdom. This changes everything you were taught about sin.
The way of Cain, mentioned in Jude verse 11, isn't just about ancient history. It is a spiritual road you can walk on today. It is the path of self-reliance, of building your own security, of trusting in the weapons of bronze and iron instead of the promises of God. And what if I told you this blueprint has been copied and pasted throughout all of human history? It's no coincidence that the next great builder in the Bible is Nimrod, the founder of Babylon. The same pattern repeats: a mighty man, a city of rebellion, a tower reaching for the heavens. It is the system of Cain, upgraded. Look at Egypt. Look at Rome. Look at every empire that has ever put its faith in chariots and legions. It is the same spirit, the same blueprint, playing out over and over again. The great theologian Augustine of Hippo saw this clearly nearly 1600 years ago. He wrote of two cities: the city of God, built on faith, and the city of man, built on pride. And who did he name as the founder of the city of man? Cain, the first murderer. He understood that the very foundation of worldly civilization, the system you live in right now, was established by the one who first chose violence over worship. So you must ask yourself a terrifying question. If this system was born from a cursed lineage, instructed by a fallen power, and perfected for the purpose of warfare and control, what does that say about the world it has built? The world you see when you look out your window. Because this system did not die in the flood. It survived. It evolved. And today it is closer to achieving its final form than ever before. Jesus gave a terrifying prophecy in Matthew chapter 24, verse 37. He said, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." Pause the video now and think with me. What defined the days of Noah? Genesis 6 tells us, "The earth was filled with violence, and the thoughts of man's heart were only evil continually." And what system created that world? The system of Cain, the civilization of Tubal-Cain. And if we are living in those days now? Look around you. This isn't ancient history. The system of Cain is not a ruin buried under desert sands. It is the operating system of the modern world. It has just been upgraded. It's no coincidence that today the global elite are pushing for the creation of smart cities. What are these? They are fortified, walled settlements, just like Cain's first city. But the walls are no longer made of stone. They are made of data, surveillance, and digital control, a promise of total security and efficiency in exchange for your total submission. It is the city of Cain on a global scale. And what about the metallurgy of Tubal-Cain? Today, the forge is not making tools of bronze and iron. It is forging a new kind of human. They call it transhumanism. Genetic editing, artificial intelligence, brain-computer interfaces. The promise is to upgrade humanity, to conquer death, to become our own gods. Do you realize what this means? It is the ultimate rebellion, to rewrite the very image of God in which you were made, using the forbidden knowledge of a new, more powerful metallurgy. This is the final craft of Tubal-Cain. So the question is not historical, it is personal, and it is urgent. You are living in the final, perfected version of Cain's world. A global system of technological control, cultural seduction, and the promise of a man-made salvation. And you must make a choice. The choice is not between political parties or economic systems. It is between two foundational blueprints: the blueprint of Cain or the blueprint of Christ. Will you place your trust in the walls of the smart city, or will you live as a pilgrim, seeking the city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God? Will you seek the upgrade of transhumanism or the transformation of the spirit? The choice is between the security of the system and the salvation of your soul. You began this journey with a simple contradiction, a wanderer who builds a city. From that single crack in the official story, you have uncovered the blueprint for the entire world system. You now see that the lineage of Cain wasn't just a cursed branch of humanity. They were the architects of a rival kingdom, a civilization built on forbidden knowledge, powered by the technology of warfare, and designed to offer humanity a salvation without God. This changes everything. The choice before you is no longer hidden, it is laid bare. You can continue to trust in the system of Cain, the smart cities, the technological upgrades, the promise of human-made security. Or you can recognize it for what it is, the final, perfected fortress of rebellion. If this video opened your eyes, if you feel the weight of this truth in your spirit, then your journey with us is just beginning. First, subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell. You cannot afford to miss what is coming next. Second, share this video with at least one person who you know needs to see this truth. Finally, go to the comments right now and answer this. After seeing this evidence, which city will you choose to live in, the city of Cain or the city of God? But the system of Cain did not begin with Cain. He was only the first human builder. In the next video, we will reveal the true identity of the serpent in the garden. Because the serpent was not just a tempter, it was an architect, already drawing the blueprints for a global rebellion that would climax with a throne set up in defiance of God Himself. And the forbidden knowledge it offered was not a metaphor, it was a technology. Don't miss it, because what you will discover will change your understanding of reality itself.